Hey guys, welcome back and welcome to episode 9. We're almost to the double digits now, so we're getting there. And I just want to say thank you for anybody who's supported me now and anybody who supports me in the future and comes back to watch these and just to get an idea of where I'm coming from the beginning. And and I just want to uh, basically talk a little bit about what I'm doing again and just say that I'm here trying to start or get involved, I guess, in the conversation of our generation and to be some place to create a place on a public sphere for discussion and debate that you know about ideas, about arts and anything that I can come across, news, and whatever it is, and just kind of allow people to talk openly and freely and to create something where we can grow and challenge our beliefs and where we can just grow as people and to learn and teach as well. And so that's what I'm trying to do here, and that's kind of the point of this. And it'll be a little bit about everything. I mean, I'll talk about you know public stuff to my personal life to music to arts and everything, and I just want to talk and touch on anything that I can, because I think anything that you come across has some sort of value, whether it's it's a Steven Tyler line from, or an Aerosmith line where he says, live and learn from fools and from sages. So even if you learn from, you can be taught incredible things by someone who knows, but you can also learn what not to do by people who don't know what to do. And so that's kind of the point of what this is, maybe I'm wrong and you guys can, tell me I'm wrong and I can be taught that way, and maybe I can learn that I'm on the right path because I'm being yelled at by idiots. And that's normally a good sign. So that's kind of where I'm going with this. And today I wanted to, first of all, kind of add to what I was talking about on the last episode and mention the fact that I was kind of talking about the communist revolt and everything, and how this last election kind of seemed to be, and along those same lines. And I wanted to clarify that that I don't think there's any sort of communist revolution coming from the right necessarily, at all. Actually, I should say not necessarily. I don't think that's happening, but I think that there's a similar class tension that you find, and that's what I was trying to hint towards. Was the class tension used to be between the Carnegie, the capitalist, kind of what we would consider, almost like a conservative guy versus, his wage workers. Now I feel like it's this elitist kind of generally left-leaning thing where it's about this high theory that really doesn't apply to the world, and they're prescribing for normal blue-collar workers what they should be doing, and those blue-collar workers are sick and tired of living within this kind of lofty, elitist, experiment. And that's kind of where I think I was going with that. So today I'm going to talk about what I think it means to be a conservative in general and what it means to be a conservative in America, because I kind of touched on it on my What is a Liberal video, but I want to delve into it because I've been really trying to do a lot with learning philosophy and the way to kind of trace through reason and logic and find a pathway towards a truth in that. And so this is one of the things I read, the book that kind of made me start thinking about this more and evaluating it and how it applies he's a British conservative philosopher, Roger Scruton. He wrote, the book I read was The Meaning of Conservatism, and it's about basically how the conservative process should be applied in law and in practice, and rather than just the lofty belief. It was saying here's what we should apply our efforts towards, I guess. And I really actually enjoyed it. I think it was really, really interesting to see, especially because the British brand of conservatism is much different than what it is here. And so um, the basic idea of what he says conservatism is, and I think I kind of believe this, is you conserve your traditions, your values, and your constitution. And those are the three things, and that kind of build up what conservatism is about, is preserving, your institutions, your traditions and all those things, and your, especially most importantly, your constitution. And I think you see that that's why Republicans tend to talk about the Constitution as, you know, um, not a living document, because when you call it a living document, you're no longer preserving it, you're using it as a weapon. You're weaponizing it towards your ideology, and that's what the left likes to do, and that's what activist judges do, and we'll talk about that another day, I guess. But that's what conservatism kind of says, is you need to keep that in order. There's rules, and you can change them, but it's a lot easier to tear something down than to build something up. You can, I mean, just look at any sort of wrecking ball. I mean, you can take down a hotel that, took 2 years to build up. That's, 40 stories. You can tear that down with a wrecking ball in no time. You can throw dynamite in it and boom, it's gone. So those are that's the basic principle of what conservatism is. It's saying we built this, we can modify it, we can renovate it, but we need to go through the process the way we set up the process, because there's a reason why it's there. And in Britain, they have a kind of because they developed out of feudalism. So their brand of conservatism, is having the House of Lords, which are noblemen who pretty much are guaranteed a seat there. I mean, like they have, it's, and I think, our Senate was kind of like that, and I think it was actually beneficial, but it was still appointed by the states who were elected democratically. And having, he kind of endorses having the royal family as a sense of tradition that, is still valuable, and all sorts of things along those lines, where here we have a constitution written out that, says what our rights are, that government is not allowed to infringe on. And I think those are the things that conservatives fight for more often than not. Like true, real conservatives fight for that, because our Constitution allows for liberality. It allows for, you to like rap music and me to like, I don't have to preserve a certain type of music to preserve our culture, because we have so many different cultures blending that, we don't have to, people want to do that a lot of times, immigrants, I'm an Irish, great grandson of an Irish immigrant, of Irish immigrants. And so, we still like go over and see my family every now and then. I've been once, but like my mom's been a few times. My grandpa goes fairly often. And, we still kind of keep in touch with that heritage, but we ascribe to the Constitution and we preserve the rights that are there, and we can bring our traditions in, because that's part of the American tradition, is that you can bring what's good about your culture here and share that with people. And that's kind of the liberal plurality that America allows. And I think that's what people want to preserve and to conserve, is the ability to be different is ingrained in our Constitution. And so you don't have to have a cultural identity like you do in England is, a country of the English. France is a country of the Franks. Germany is a country of, the German tribes. Like they're all grouped by ethnicity, and that's why conservatism over there is a lot of times a very nationalist sort of thing, because conserving their identity and their traditions requires, conserving their ethnicity somewhat. And I think it is valuable to point out that it's something that you shouldn't just turn away from. You should be careful about how you go about doing that, but you can't just erase, 1,000 years of English history because, because they're just all white people. It's like, well, they were, they came from the Druids and all the, they were living in England for a couple thousand years, or I don't know how long people were on England, but obviously they're going to be white, because there's no need to be dark there. that's how race works. Is if you're further away from the equator, you're a little bit lighter. And so they had developed an ethnicity over thousands of years that they want to preserve. And I think that's, because where they got to, they were a world power. They were incredible. They did a lot of bad things, but they had incredible fruits of their labor. And so obviously what they're doing works. If you have a gardener or a farmer who's got plenty of crops and he's able to feed his family and to sell it and to make money, then obviously he's doing something right with his, with that. He may, have a bad year. He may have, things go wrong on his farm, and he may make some wrong turns and, and all that. But if you have bounty, you're doing something right. And normally you're doing a lot of things right. And so the idea there is you want to preserve those things that you're doing right, and allow people to challenge. You do have to have the liberal mindset to allow people to challenge the things that aren't going well and to really look at them. But I think you have to preserve the institutions and the traditions that you have in order to navigate that correctly. It's like, as soon as I guess the best thing to look at is in the family institution is a great one to look at, because if you can break it down easily, when you turn 18 and you kind of go off, the institution that you're within, the form of the institution changes radically pretty quickly, because you're kind of splitting off from your, the traditional family that you grew up in, and about to start, and maybe looking forward into starting your own. But you're still part of that, and it still took 18 years to get you to the point where you could kind of veer off. And so that institution serves itself, and it is something that is an ends in and of itself, and that's another point that I'll talk about in a sec. But the point of having a family is simply to have a family, and so you don't just tear that down because of one argument or one fight that you guys have. You're not just wrestling around as brothers and it goes too far and someone ends up crying and then all of a sudden you're no longer brothers. That's not how an institution works. It's we got to figure out this problem and save this. And that's what conservatives do, is they say, look, there's a problem here. We need to figure that out and save this institution, because this institution works. If it works 99% of the time, that's pretty good. We just need to look at that 1% and see why it's not working, and make sure that, we don't hurt, by solving something for that 1%, that we hurt the 99, or that we create a new 2% of people who are disadvantaged or who are having trouble within this institution. And so that's where I think the efforts are focused, and in America, the brand is so different because it's not based on an ethnicity. It's based on a culture of sharing culture, and a culture of live and let live, and a culture based on the rights in the Bill of Rights, and based on the republic that we have, that says, and that's based on the fact that our culture, it's based on the states having the ability to govern themselves, because like I've said, I think on here before, is you can't govern each state the same way. And so having the decentralization that we have is something worth preserving, because we all have different cultures. I mean, and it's I don't want to I would never live in California or New York, never, unless they start governing like Indiana or Texas. I mean, because I don't share those values. And I think it's beautiful that I can move within this country from state to state based on what they do. Like, if you live in Illinois right now and and they make a law that says, whatever, I don't know, and it's something you don't like, you can say, well, I'm going to go one state over. Indiana doesn't have that law. If you live in Wyoming and you're mad that weed's, illegal, you can go straight down to Colorado and you can smoke all you want, and I think that's a beautiful thing, that you can do that. You can move that way and you have that freedom. And I think that's a part of the American culture that we need to preserve, is the individuality, and the fact that, you hear it all the time, the smallest minority is the individual. And so that's what our Constitution looks out for, is the individual, then the community, then maybe the small municipality, then the state, then the federal government. And and it goes bottom up. It goes from the individual up, and that idea is worth conserving in my point of view, because it's worked the best out of any idea that's ever been tried on planet Earth. And so when I say that I'm a conservative, I would say that it's because I conserve the most liberal constitution ever written, and the most successful constitution ever written, and the most successful experiment of a state that's ever been done. And any time that you mess with the experiment and you expand power, especially at the federal level, I think you threaten the success, and you threaten the individual's ability to be an individual. And those are the kinds of things that I look out for as a conservative, and personally. So that's kind of where the American brand is. It's based on the freedom and the liberty that we have, whereas normally that's a liberal, that's the liberal side. In England, the Liberal Party is the one that says, we need to tear down this institution because people need to be free, and the conservatives saying, whoa, 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 okay, we don't need to tear it down, let's look at it. And here it's like, the conservatives are saying, well, we don't need to tear anything down, we need to build up what we have, because we're already free. We were freer in the beginning than we have been ever since. The beginning of our country was the freest point in time for our country, bar none. I mean, you couldn't, there's no income tax, there was no marriage licenses, no passports, all the things the little burdens that you have to go through now to do something that you want to do are because of people going against what our Constitution is really about. And because it's really there to be a mediator between conflict. That's all. That's all that our government should do, is protect us, our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Yeah. And by that it means it's, if someone threatens our country and with war, they protect us. If someone threatens our liberty with war, they protect us. And if, really the only people who threaten our pursuit of happiness generally is the government, by regulating business and not allowing us to, do what we want to do to be happy. So really they're kind of getting their own way on that. But, making sure that people aren't taken advantage of by people and those kind of things, I can understand. You can't be defrauded. You can't be coerced or forced into something that you don't want to do. And I think a lot of times that's more of like a civil case. But there's ways that, that could be done from the exterior. But I think that's kind of more left up to localities and the states. But, that's why I think I consider myself a conservative, is because I think the ideas that are written in the Constitution, the ideas that were ingrained in it and that were that developed around it, that developed, into that, and all that, just everything that came out of the, that whole American Revolution, from, Washington, and from Jefferson and Franklin and Madison and all those guys, and John Adams and all those people who are like our early founders, the ideas that they had about people being free are incredible. You know what? Actually, I have an idea. One of the points that I think that we can talk about that's really actually a good one is, the fact that they had to compromise on not making slavery illegal, I guess, in the Constitution, and that they, and how they counted people as three-fifths. That actually, first of all, counting them as three-fifths helped work towards their liberty, because if slaves counted as a whole person, then the South would have had an insane amount of delegates of people who aren't voting, and thus giving the states more votes in the House, and instead of, so they could grow the population by buying people and get more delegates. That's wrong, and then they can keep oppressing those people that way. So that's why the North wanted it to be zero, not count as anybody, because that would, in fact, make it so that the North had a little bit more power against slaveholders. That was the goal, and so they compromised on 3/5 down the middle, or not down the middle, but close. So that's why that's there, and I think the fact that we eventually corrected slavery and we corrected it as the whole, and without the Civil War, it would have been gone in a few years anyways, because it was gone throughout the Western world in a few years anyways as well. So I think that that's one of those examples that and women's suffrage is another great one that you can say, it took time to get there, don't get me wrong, and it should have taken a hell of a lot less time to get there, of course, but we got there, and we did it without destroying, our Constitution. We got it without losing everyone's freedom in the process, whereas I think a lot of the objectives now that people have for like, social issues just tear down my freedom, and tear down, your freedom, because they have to be even more free out of a sort of like, I don't know, out of like revenge, because they've been kept down so long, and those things are wrong, but that people have to fight for that idea, that people have to fight for gay marriage, that people have to fight, to be trans if they want to. Yeah, I mean, they shouldn't have to fight for that, but I also shouldn't have to bow down to them either, and I shouldn't have to change my life to accommodate their life necessarily. I can be reasonable and polite, and I can make reasonable concessions, but I'm not going to change the way I live and the way I believe based around that, and I think that's totally fair. So that's kind of where I'm going with all this, and I guess I'm just going to end it here. Again, thanks for listening, and for those who are, and anyone in the future, and yeah, just join in on this conversation of our generation, and let's make a way for us to dialogue and to talk about ideas and things that maybe people don't want to talk about, and dive into ideas that are quite easy to dive into and easy to understand, and see if we can get better at it. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.